Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. Welcome to Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are tonight's headlines.
Taliban has tightened their territorial stranglehold around Kabul as refugees from the insurgents' relentless offensive flood the capital, and U.S. Marines return to oversee emergency evacuations.
More than 1 million people were urged to seek shelter as torrential rain triggered floods and landslides in western Japan, leaving at least 1 dead and 2 missing.
And July was the hottest month globally ever recorded, according to a U.S. scientific agency, in the latest data to sound the alarm about the climate crisis.
And Banksy, Britain's most famous street artist, confirmed what many had already suspected, that he is indeed the author of a number of works that have appeared recently in the British seaside town.
First, the Afghan Taliban tightened their territorial stranglehold around Kabul today as refugees from the insurgents' relentless offensive flooded the capital, and U.S. Marines returned to oversee emergency evacuations from Afghanistan. Despite the frantic evacuation efforts, the Biden administration continues to insist that a complete Taliban takeover is not inevitable. Take a look.
We will be able to move thousands per day, but that's just the airlift capacity. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to end up with that every day. It's going to depend on the processing and how that goes. Kabul is not right now in an imminent threat environment, but clearly, David, if you just look at what the Taliban's been doing, you can see that they are trying to isolate Kabul. Now, what they want to do if they achieve that isolation, I think only they can speak to.
I think they're beginning to realize they've got to come together politically at the top, and but we're going to continue to keep our commitment. But I do not regret my decision.
This is not abandonment. This is not an evacuation. This is not the wholesale withdrawal. What this is a reduction in the size of our civilian footprint.
In Kabul, U.S. Embassy staff were ordered to begin shredding and burning sensitive material as the first American troops from a planned 3,000-strong redeployment started arriving to secure the airport and oversee evacuations. The scale and speed of the Taliban advance have shocked Afghans and the U.S.-led alliance. A host of European countries, including Britain, Germany, Denmark, and Spain, all announced the withdrawal of personnel from their respective embassies on Friday.
Und wir haben im Krisenstab ebenfalls beschlossen, dass die ohnehin für diesen Monat vorgesehenen Charterflüge vorgezogen werden. Wir werden mit diesen Charterflügen die Mitarbeiterinnen und Mitarbeiter der deutschen Botschaft ausfliegen, aber auch der noch in Afghanistan befindlichen Ortskräfte. Die Botschaft wird arbeitsfähig bleiben in Afghanistan, in Kabul. Und deshalb haben
Helicopters flitted back and forth between Kabul's airport and the sprawling U.S. diplomatic compound in the heavily fortified Green Zone 46 years after choppers evacuated Americans from Saigon, signaling the end of Vietnam War. The U.S.-led evacuation is focused on thousands of people, including embassy employees and Afghans and their families who fear retribution for working as interpreters or in other support roles for the United States.
Meanwhile, Conservative MP Tom Tugendhat, chairman of the British Foreign Affairs Committee and a former Afghanistan veteran, says in an interview with AFP that the scenario unfolding in Afghanistan is entirely predictable and that the withdrawal was a huge error.
The scenario we're seeing today is entirely predictable. What the withdrawal has meant is not just a withdrawal of 2,500 US troops or 750 Brits. It's been a withdrawal of the battle-winning capability that they supplied, the helicopters, the air power, and so on, which was maintained by US contractors and in many cases flown by US personnel. And that's what has changed. The reality is there was no need to leave. We didn't leave Germany in 1950. We haven't walked out of Korea. We've held the line in Japan. For many, many years, we have sustained peacekeeping operations in Cyprus and indeed in other parts around the world. There was no need to do this. Admittedly, it wasn't free, but 750 British troops is not a huge cost. And no British soldier had been killed in combat since 2013, and no American for a number of years too. This is a huge error. It's a major strategic error by the United States and indeed by her allies. And it has made us look untrustworthy and unreliable at a time when countries around the world are deciding whether to side with autocracies and democracies for the first time in many, many years. A country's becoming autocratic, leaving the democratic club, if you like. In 2001, the Taliban never occupied the whole of Afghanistan. Badakhshan was held by the Northern Alliance under Ahmad Shah Massoud, and there were areas of hope, there were areas of possibility. What we're now seeing is the reverse. We're seeing the fact that the 2021 may be the 20th anniversary of 9/11, but this time the anniversary will be celebrated, if you like, by the fact that the Afghan Taliban have finally taken over the whole of the country. There's no way back. The next thing that the countries like the United Kingdom and France and Germany and Spain, all those NATO countries that were involved in the conflict need to think about is what legitimacy are they going to give the Taliban regime? In what way are they going to include them in the international community? What sanctions, what conditions will they apply to them taking their place as a global state?
The UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, is now alarmed by the unfolding humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. The UN Assistance Mission has warned that without a significant de-escalation in violence, Afghanistan is on course to witness the highest ever number of documented civilian casualties in a single year. Take a look.
The human toll of spiraling hostilities is immense. The United Nations Assistance Mission has warned that without a significant de-escalation in violence, Afghanistan is on course to witness the highest ever number of documented civilian casualties in a single year since the UN records began.
In other news, Antonio Guterres called on the Taliban to immediately halt the offensive and asserted that seizing power through military force is a losing proposition and can only lead to prolonged civil war. Take a look.
Even a country that has tragically known generations of conflict, Afghanistan is in the throes of yet another chaotic and desperate chapter, an incredible tragedy for its long-suffering people. Afghanistan is spinning out of control. Continued urban conflict will mean continued carnage, with civilians paying the highest price. I call on all parties to take heed of the conflict's heavy toll and its devastating impact on civilians. They all must do more to protect civilians. I remind all parties of their legal and moral obligation to take all measures to protect civilians. Directing attacks against civilians is a serious violation of international humanitarian law and amounts to a war crime. I call on the Taliban to immediately halt the offensive and to negotiate in good faith in the interest of Afghanistan and its people.
She's with me, money.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security issued a new terrorism threat advisory ahead of the anniversary of the September 11 terror attacks and amid the resurgence of the coronavirus pandemic. The National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin said the United States faces a heightened threat environment from both domestic terrorists and those inspired or motivated by foreign terrorists and other malign foreign influences. It also cited increased use of online forums to influence and spread violent extremist narratives and promote violent activity. The new advisory updated a January alert following the attack on the U.S. Congress by supporters of then-President Donald Trump, when DHS said the country faced increasingly complex and volatile threats from anti-government and racially motivated extremists, often stirred up by online influence from abroad. The bulletin had already been amended in May, with DHS warning violent extremists could still exploit the easing of COVID-19 restrictions to conduct attacks.
In other news, police said that they were investigating the background of a troubled loner who obtained a firearms license and shot dead 5 people, including his mother and a 3-year-old girl, in Britain's first mass shooting in 11 years. Watch this.
It is our understanding, and I can confirm, that a man known as Jake Davison, aged 22, had murdered a woman at an address in Biddick Drive using a firearm. I will not reveal that address, as we are still contacting the members of the family of the lady who has died. Mr. Davison then left that address, entered Biddick Drive, where he immediately shot and killed a very young girl. He also shot and killed the male relative of that girl. This was a truly shocking event and was witnessed by members of the public. Eyewitnesses have told us that then Mr. Davison turned the gun upon himself, taking his own life. They have described that firearm as a pump-action shotgun. As I repeat, there are therefore 5 people of Plymouth who have lost their lives overnight, and Mr. Davison himself, including a particularly young child.
No motive has yet emerged for Thursday evening's bloodshed at the hands of 22-year-old gunman Jake Davison, who killed himself after the 6-minute spree in a quiet residential area not far from Western Europe's biggest naval base. Davison's social media channels indicated an interest in guns, right-wing libertarian politics, and shoot-'em-up video games. The content suggested a self-pitying loner, alienated from his family and hostile to women. On Facebook, Davison said he was originally from the U.S. city of Phoenix, Arizona, but that was not substantiated in local accounts. Now, Britain has some of the Western world's toughest gun controls, and police are not routinely armed. But ownership of sporting rifles and shotguns is allowed there, subject to strict licensing rules. Licenses last 5 years and are meant to be granted only after thorough police background checks, including for mental illness. Britain's last mass shooting was in June 2010, when taxi driver Derek Bird killed 12 people in Cumbria, northwest England.
In other news, July was the hottest month globally ever recorded, according to a U.S. scientific agency, in the latest data to sound the alarm about the climate crisis. Rick Spinrad, administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, in a statement said that this new record adds to the disturbing and disruptive path that climate change has set for the globe. NOAA said combined land and ocean surface temperature was 1.67 degrees Fahrenheit above the 20th century average of 60.4 degrees Fahrenheit, making it the hottest July since record-keeping began 142 years ago. The month was 0.02 degrees Fahrenheit higher than the previous record set in July 2016, which was equaled in 2019 and 2020. However, according to the data released by the European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service, last month was the third warmest July on record globally. Last week, a UN climate science report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change provoked shock by saying the world is on course to reach 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming around 2030.
The World Meteorological Organization's head of Applied Climate Services, Bob Stefanski, says the organization is seeking to verify a temperature record in Sicily of 48.8 degrees Celsius, and that temperature record for continental Europe may exceed 50 degrees Celsius in the future. Take a look.
Right now, we're trying to verify a reported temperature record in Sicily of 48.8 degrees Celsius. That's 119.8 Fahrenheit. Happened on August 11th. This need to establish whether this is a new temperature record for continental Europe. The previous record was in 1977 at Athens at 48 degrees. Again, we can't verify it right now. It came from a regional network, reporting network that deals with agricultural applications. Though we know that in WMO, and it is connected to the National Met Service, but either way, it'll take us a month or two to verify this. Likewise, there are reports of temperature records in Tunisia, which we need to verify. And the heat wave is continuing this weekend, and concerned of records to fall in Spain as well, which the current record was 47.3 in Cordoba in 2003. And the concern really is that we can't say when new records will be broken, but we need to prepare for the eventuality of further records to be broken with temperatures above 50 degrees Celsius in Europe in the future.
Meanwhile, the death toll from Turkey's flash floods soared to at least 38 today as President Recep Tayyip Erdogan visited one of the hardest hit cities to lead a prayer for the victims and pledge government help. Take a look. Now, the devastation across Turkey's northern Black Sea regions came just as the disaster-hit country was gaining control over hundreds of wildfires that killed 8 people and destroyed swathes of forest along its scenic southern coast. In a provisional toll, the government's disaster agency, AFAD, reported that 32 people had died in Kastamonu province along the Black Sea, and that 6 others had lost their lives in the neighboring area of Sinop. But an undetermined number of people have also been reported missing. Turkey's emergence as a frontline country in the battle against climate change also poses a challenge to President Erdogan 2 years before the next scheduled general election. The powerful Turkish leader was roundly condemned on social media for tossing out bags of tea to locals while visiting one of the fire-ravaged areas at the end of July.
Meanwhile, more than 1 million people were urged to seek shelter as torrential rain triggered floods and landslides in western Japan today, leaving at least 1 dead and 2 missing. Authorities in Hiroshima and the northern part of Kyushu issued their highest evacuation alert as the weather agency reported unprecedented levels of rain in the area. Under the non-compulsory alert, around 1.4 million residents have been asked to leave their homes immediately, public broadcaster NHK reported. Now, a local official said a 59-year-old woman died and 2 of her family members were missing after a landslide destroyed 2 houses in Onsen, Nagasaki Prefecture. Downpours are forecast for several more days over a large swathe of the country. Scientists say climate change is intensifying the risk of heavy rain in Japan and elsewhere because a warmer atmosphere holds more water. Now, unprecedented levels of heavy rain have been observed. Yushi Adachi, a meteorological agency official, told reporters in Tokyo. Adachi said it's highly likely that some kind of disaster has already occurred. The maximum alert is needed even in areas where risks of landslides and flooding are usually not so high. Downpours last month caused a devastating landslide in the central resort town of Atami that killed 23 people, with 4 still missing.
Meanwhile, endless rows of mud-caked vehicles damaged during deadly floods last month sit abandoned in a parking lot in the central city of Zhengzhou, a monument to the power of last month's record floods to hit Henan province. Take a look.
Italian firefighters battled to extinguish a wildfire in the natural reserve of Monte Catillo in Tivoli, east of Rome. Yesterday, the Italian Fire Brigade said that they had evacuated 25 families overnight as the emergency services battled a dangerous blaze in the Monte Catillo Nature Reserve near the Rome suburb of Tivoli amid scorching temperatures on the peninsula. A further 30 residents of a home for poor and orphan children were also evacuated. The Italian capital has seen temperatures reach around 37 degrees Celsius or 99 Fahrenheit in recent days. Meanwhile, regional authorities on Sicily recorded Europe's highest ever temperature on Wednesday of 48.8 degrees Celsius, although this still has to be officially confirmed. Italy, like other nations on the Mediterranean, has battled forest fires throughout the summer, with wildfires tearing through woodland in Calabria and blazes occurring on the islands of Sicily and Sardinia.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
The Bundesliga will start up again. It would be great if we had full stands and to sing our battle songs. Oh, and more goals wouldn't hurt either. A surprise would be great too. The Bundesliga highlights. Kickoff.
Events happen around us all the time. In our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Tawanan, kulitan, at siyempre, kainan. Sa nakalipas na taon, ito ang ating naging ultimate tambayan. Walang iba, kundi ang ating mga tahanan. Kaya naman, maraming iba't ibang kabuhayan ang nagsusulputan para mapanatili ang kalinisan ng ating tahanan.
Nag-start po kami ng 250 pesos lang po Sa kasalukuyan po, halos times 10 na po yung umiikot po naming puhunan para po sa negosyo.
Gagawa po tayo ng powder detergent sa puhunang nagkakahalagang 1,500 pesos.
Lahat ng mga negosyo ngayon na tinatawag nilang convenience-based, napakaganda talaga ng potensyal.
Ano mga tol? Ready na ba kayong makiride sa ganitong negosyo? Ako po, si Robin Padilla. At ito po ang ulat. Kaagapay sa hanap buhay.
Sa hanap
Welcome back. While still dealing with the COVID variants, the return of restrictions and ongoing resistance against vaccine mandates, the state of Hawaii now faces another troubling statistic for the most number of new COVID cases in a single day. Alpha Decenas from our EBC Hawaii Pacific Bureau has this.
It is real, it is terrifying, and tragically, it's preventable.
Earlier this month, Hawaii posted the highest number of COVID-19 cases in a single day at 665. That was then. This is now.
Today, the Department of Health is reporting more people infected with COVID-19 in Hawaii than any other day since the pandemic began. 1,167 additional people are infected by COVID-19. The Department of Health has reported more than 2,000 cases over the past 3 days. That means, regardless of the interruption in data, an average of 729 new COVID infections each day over the last 3 days. We continue to trend in the wrong direction.
In addition, Governor Ige offered what could be described as some tough love to both vaccinated and unvaccinated residents.
Our heroes in healthcare on the front lines battling COVID again are being asked to save us. It is unfair. Unfair because we all can save ourselves. Our behavior can save us. The actions we take each and every day can make a difference in the battle against COVID. The choices we make can save us, and we can and must turn this around. We must change our behavior and take action. Please, if you're not vaccinated, get vaccinated. It is the best thing that you can do to help yourself and help our community. It is clear that the vaccines approved are safe and effective. They do an amazing job of preventing severe illness, hospitalization, and death. And even those who are vaccinated must do more. We all must continue to wear our masks. We must practice physical distancing whenever possible. We must avoid crowds and social gatherings, and we have got to stay home when sick or think we may have been exposed to COVID.
To help spread the word, Lieutenant Governor Josh Green continued his vaccine campaign push with some statistics through social media.
We have 290 people in the hospital, but let me break that down for you a little bit. Of the 290 people with COVID in the hospital, only 23 of them have either been vaccinated or partially vaccinated. The other 267 individuals were totally unvaccinated and very vulnerable. In our state, 80.5% of all people who can get vaccinated have chosen it and have begun to be safe. Another 19.5% of our population, however, are not vaccinated whatsoever when they could be. And those are the people that are most vulnerable to catch COVID and most likely to be in the hospital. Remember, you have a 99.999% chance of survival if you're vaccinated, no matter what happens. So please do that.
With the rise of cases and increased demand for testing on Oahu, the city and county of Honolulu is extending its free testing through August 21. Those eligible can take advantage of the mobile lab at Daniel K. Inouye International Airport. Reporting from Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm Alfred Asenas. Eagle News, we live in interesting times. Back to you.
Thank you so much for your report. And now, Arian Torres from our American Samoa Bureau reports on the territorial governor's recent visit to Honolulu, plus Hawaii's lieutenant governor gets help from local celebrities to encourage more people to get vaccinated. Watch this.
The total. Talofa, I am Arian Torres, and this is the latest news in American Samoa and the Pacific. The Honorable Lemanu and cabinet members host a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the newly upgraded ASG Hawaii office. Lieutenant Governor Green and Mayor Blangiardi received cultural gifts on behalf of the people of American Samoa. Since the Coleman Tufele administration, the American Samoa Government ASG Hawaii office has served one of the primary purpose to cater to the needs of the greater Samoan population of Hawaii. According to American Samoa Department of Health, 53.9% of the American Samoa are fully vaccinated with COVID-19 vaccine, and the total goal is to achieve 80% or higher of the total population. Despite the one case that Eagle News reported last April, but turned out to be a false positive, the territory remains free of COVID-19. Meanwhile, in Hawaii, Lieutenant Governor Josh Green gets help from local celebrities to get more people vaccinated.
472 cases, 6,352 in the last 14 days, 263 people in the hospital, of which 23 are vaccinated, everyone else is unvaccinated. We've had 523 cases on average, but I have some celebrities in today. I got Becky, Mitz.
That's celebrities. Yeah, thank you. That's really pushing it.
And Tumula, with the underscore here.
Underscore, yeah.
These are people of great reason. Listen to them.
Is this a 5 or can you make it more? Okay, 5.
It's a 5. They've both been vaccinated, and they have a message for you.
Get vaccinated. It really makes a difference. I mean, you're looking at the expert right here. Look how many are vaccinated versus how many are in the hospital. It's so necessary right now. And it doesn't hurt, does it?
Doesn't hurt, yeah. So get vaccinated, and basically what these two people said.
Thank you.
Reporting from Pango Pango in American Samoa, this is Arian Torres. Eagle News, we live in interesting times. Fa'afetai Telelava.
Now, Russia today recorded its highest daily coronavirus death toll for a third day running as the country continues to struggle with the Delta variant amid sluggish vaccination rates. Now, a government tally showed that 819 fatalities over the past 24 hours and 22,144 new cases. Russia, the fourth worst hit country in the world, in terms of cases, has since mid-June been hit by a new wave of infections driven by the aggressive Delta variant. The new figures bring Russia's total fatalities from COVID-19 to 166,795, the highest toll in Europe. The figure only takes into account deaths where the virus was established as the primary cause of death after an autopsy. Under a broader definition for deaths linked to the coronavirus, statistics agency Rosstat said that Russia has been more than 300,000 fatalities as of the end of June. Authorities have faced a vaccine skeptic population with a poll by the independent Levada Center this week showing that 55% of Russians do not plan on getting inoculated.
In other news, the Netherlands will subject travelers coming from the Philippines to a 10-day mandatory quarantine upon arrival, starting August 14. The Dutch embassy in Manila said concerned travelers must also submit a negative nucleic acid amplification test, or NAAT, polymerase chain reaction, or PCR test, taken at least 48 hours before departure, or a negative antigen test taken within 24 hours before arrival beginning August 16. The mandatory quarantine and testing also apply to travelers who have been vaccinated against the coronavirus or COVID-19. Meanwhile, seafarers who are boarding a vessel in the Netherlands are exempted from the mandatory quarantine upon arrival. Travelers transitioning through the airport and who will not enter the Netherlands, including children under 12, are exempted from testing and the mandatory quarantine. However, the embassy reminded that all travelers are required to complete a quarantine declaration before entering the Netherlands.
Now this week, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo facing possible impeachment over sexual harassment claims from 11 women and mounting pressure from fellow Democrats. Here's Bobby Soriano for the report.
New York State Governor Andrew M. Cuomo announced his resignation today amid mounting pressure by his fellow politicians.
And I love New York. And I love you. And everything I have ever done has been motivated by that love. And I would never want to be unhelpful in any way. And I think that given the circumstances, the best way I can help now is if I step aside and let government get back to governing. And therefore, that's what I'll do, because I work for you. And doing the right thing is doing the right thing for you.
Now, the governor maintains his innocence to the allegations of misconduct, but believes that his resignation is the best thing for the state of New York, as it faces a growing rise of COVID cases due to the Delta variant. His duties will be passed on to Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul, who will be New York State's first female governor when Governor Cuomo's resignation takes into effect in 2 weeks. Reporting from New York, Bobby Soriano, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Kinikita ko po dati sa 1 week, umaabot po ng 4,000. Ngayon po sa isang linggo po, 700, 800. 2 araw pa po yun kung minsan.
Minsan kumikita lang po ako ng 300. Yun na po yung pinakamalaki kong kita. Minsan 140. Kaya ginagawa ko, inuuna ko na lang muna yung anak ko bago ko yung sarili namin. Kasi kami kaya naman po namin. Eh, syempre siya, hindi naman pwedeng kakain kami yung bata. Hindi po, kaya inuuna ko po siya. Si David po kasi na overdue po sa tiyan ko ng 10 days. Hanggang na-infection po yung dugo niya. Tapos kung saan-sang ospital po siya tinakbo.
Pag lakas lang po ng loob para hindi sumuko sa buhay kahit naman pong hirap.
Mahal ko po yung anak ko na yun. Hindi ko po pinababaya. Buti na lang po may mga tumutulong at magagandang loob na lumalapit po sa akin. Malaking tulong po kasi po mapapagawa na po namin lahat ng pangangailangan niya. Tsaka suportahan na po siya sa pangangailangan niyang maintenance na gamot.
to the news, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or BSP, stands ready to deploy appropriate monetary policy tools necessary to safeguard price and financial stability goals. Here's Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Governor Benjamin Joc.
BSP will remain vigilant against any emerging risk to the outlook for inflation growth. BSP stands ready to adjust its policy settings as needed to ensure price and financial stability conducive to a sustainable economic recovery.
Jochna said he believes the current uptick in global commodity prices is transitory given the revival of demand as economies recover from the pandemic. He said that while fluctuations in global commodity prices impact on domestic inflation rate, the central bank is closely monitoring and assessing this to prevent any signs of second-round effects from supply-side inflation.
Malaysia's central bank slashed its economic growth forecast for this year after authorities imposed a new lockdown to fight a coronavirus surge driven by the highly contagious Delta variant. Like other parts of Southeast Asia, the country is battling its worst COVID-19 wave yet, reporting tens of thousands of cases and hundreds of deaths a day. The new lockdown, imposed in June, has forced the closure of most businesses and dealt a heavy blow to an already teetering economy, but has so far had little success in blunting the virus surge. Citing the reimposition of curbs, the central bank slashed its full-year growth forecast to between 3% and 4%, down from 6 to 7.5% previously. However, Bank Negara added it expected a gradual recovery in the fourth quarter this year with higher global growth and sustained policy support, providing a further lift to economic growth.
Meanwhile, takeaway food app Deliveroo cut losses in the first half as the coronavirus pandemic boosted home deliveries. Here's Kathleen Eusebio for the report.
International takeaway food app Deliveroo cut losses in the first half as the coronavirus pandemic boosted home deliveries, a results update showed Wednesday. The British group, which had a poor stock market launch in March, said net losses narrowed to £108.7 million from £126.2 million in the first 6 months of last year. Despite revenue soaring 82% to £922.5 million, Deliveroo's costs have jumped owing to a need for more staff. Group founder and chief executive Will Shu said in Wednesday's earnings statement that while consumer behavior regarding takeaways may moderate as lockdowns ease, Deliveroo is excited about the opportunity ahead. He added that Deliveroo is seeing strong growth and engagement as restrictions are lifted. Deliveroo has enjoyed a dazzling ride in a short space of time, but faces questions over its sustainability, highlighted by its failed stock market debut, which took place in London. Deliveroo's initial public offering was London's biggest stock market launch for a decade, valuing the group at £7.6 billion after the 8-year-old company enjoyed surging sales during the coronavirus lockdowns. But its share price tumbled on launch day by almost a third from the initial public offering price of £3.90 as investors questioned Deliveroo's treatment of its self-employed riders. Following Wednesday's update, Deliveroo shares were trading down 3.7% at £3.50. They had gone up Monday after German rival Delivery Hero bought a 5% stake in the group, giving confidence to its outlook despite ongoing concerns over its model. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Kathleen Eusebio. We live in interesting times.
The jailed de facto leader of the giant Samsung Group walked free on parole, the latest instance of South Korea's long tradition of freeing business leaders imprisoned for corruption or tax evasion on economic grounds. Take a look.
국민 여러분들께 너무 큰 걱정을 끼쳐드렸습니다. 정말 죄송합니다. 저에 대한 걱정, 비난, 우려, 그리고 큰 기대 잘 듣고 있습니다. 열심히 하겠습니다.
이재용 부회장님, 홍나이 마이크! 부회장님, 홍나이 동생이야 대전에서 왔어. 형 태워. 마이크! 저거 마른 살 뿌리도 못 써.
Lee Jae-yong, the 202nd richest person in the world, according to Forbes, with a net worth of $11.4 billion, was serving a 2.5-year prison sentence imposed in January for bribery, embezzlement, and other offenses in connection with the corruption scandal that brought down ex-South Korean President Park Geun-hye. The Justice Ministry announced Monday he had been paroled among around 800 early releases, citing concerns over the coronavirus pandemic's impact on the economy. Nonetheless, Lee remains on trial over alleged stock manipulation that effectively eased his path to take control of the family conglomerate, the same purpose for which he was convicted of bribing Park. The giant Samsung Group is by far the largest of the family-controlled empires known as chaebols that dominate businesses in South Korea, the world's 12th largest economy. Its flagship subsidiary, Samsung Electronics, is the world's biggest smartphone maker. Chaebol families often have only a small ownership stake in their empires, but maintain control through complex webs of cross-shareholdings between units.
And finally, in our news, Banksy, Britain's most famous street artist, confirmed what many had already suspected, that he is indeed the author of a number of works that have appeared recently in the British seaside towns. Paul Goh, Principal and Vice Chancellor of Arts University, Bournemouth, told the BBC that Banksy has clearly been enjoying an East Anglian staycation. These are very sophisticated stencils showing an artist at the top of his game, he said. In Greater Yarmouth, a couple dancing to the sound of an accordion player are perched atop a bus shelter. In another, sticking to the seaside theme, a mechanical claw dangles above a public bench as if anyone who sits there is about to be plucked up like a prize in an arcade game. Another shows a giant seagull swooping down to snatch some outsized chips, French fries to U.S. readers, from a waste skip or dumpster. One piece in Lowestoft is of a child with a shovel appearing to have built a sandcastle amid dug-up pavement stones. In recent years, the Bristol artist, who cleverly maintains the mystery of his identity, has kept the attention of the contemporary art world with his social commentaries and causes, migrants, opposition to Brexit, denunciation of Islamist radicals, as well as stirring the excitement of the moneyed art markets. Last March, a work honoring caregivers fetched a record £14.4 million, or about $20 million or 20 million euros. The proceeds went to a hospital charity, Christie's auctioneers said at the time.
Finally admitted it.
I finally admitted it, but we are yet to find out who he is.
Who really is.
That's the goal. Someday we'll find out.
Yeah.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. It is the weekend. I'm CJ Hero. See you on Monday.
Enjoy your weekend. And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.